Aloha, everyone, and welcome back to our monthly College of Engineering Leadership Seminar Series, always hosted and sponsored by our friends Ken and Donna Hayashida and the Hayashida Ohana. So very much appreciative of their support for our Leadership Seminar Series. Thank you all for joining us today. I know this is slightly out of sequence for us, but we wanted to definitely make sure that we could bring today's speaker, Meli James, on because she is just absolutely one of my favorites. She is a mover and shaker here in town and a huge supporter of tech and innovation and startups here in Hawaii, really meant to give local companies, local people a leg up and support our industry and our growth. And oftentimes, it's a variety of companies, but oftentimes it is technology and innovation that engineers can be definitely taking and should be taking advantage of. So definitely wanted to have Meli come and say, share some of her thoughts and her experiences here with both our current students, our alumni, and our friends from industry. We see a lot of our friends online right now. I do want to give a quick shout out to Aaron and Christine and their watch party at HDR in their conference room. I hope Gail and Tom have bought you guys lunch. So if not, maybe encourage them for future seminar series because we understand you guys are avid watchers of our monthly seminar series. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our engineering student ambassadors, Mia. Have at it, Mia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mia, and with me today is Adam. And we'd like to welcome everyone to our first leadership seminar series of the fall 2022 semester presented by the Hayashida family. We've got a great speaker here today, so let's jump right in. Adam will start off by introducing today's speaker, Meli James.
So Meli James is the co-founder of Mana Up, a Hawaii-based product accelerator and venture fund that's building the state's next generation of consumer brands. She's also the president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association. She was born and raised in Honolulu, and Meli lived in Silicon Valley for more than 10 years, where she co-founded numerous startups, including Nervino, a #1 ranked wine app, an Apple platform top 100 app during its time. Meli has also been recognized by the Entrepreneurial magazine as one of 5 women to watch, and as one of 8 women leaders who are disrupting entrepreneurship. She serves on the board of UHA Health Insurance, Board of Regents for Chaminade University, and is also a 2020 Omidyar Fellow. Meli is a graduate of Punahou School and Cornell University.
Now we'll have Meli begin with any opening remarks she'd like to share.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. I feel like I don't even have to say anything more. I just got the full introduction, so I'm good. Just jump into Q&A. But yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more on my journey and some of the lessons that I've learned, and looking forward to all of your questions at the end. I normally like questions during, but I think with this size of group, it'll make sense to hold those to the end. So I'm going to share my screen here, and please let me know if you can see that, and I'll just go into slideshow view. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, awesome. So, as I said, I'm going to be going through a little bit more on my journey as a person growing up in Hawaii, and as well as an entrepreneur. And ultimately, this leads into this, why having an entrepreneurial mindset, why I believe having an entrepreneurial mindset is key to to success in life. So, I think a lot of people wait for someone else to tell them what to do. I know a lot of students on this call, or even ourselves, and I'll get into what happened to me as a young adult, kind of waiting for, things to present themselves to us, and really kind of looking at what other people think we should be doing, and kind of creating a path that really isn't ours. And I wish I had known that earlier in my life. I finally kind of took the reins of my own life, back when I was in my late 20s. But really before that, feeling really disconnected from my decisions and almost just picking from the opportunities that were in front of me as opposed to really thinking about what I wanted. So I think it's important for every person to learn and engage with an entrepreneurial mindset so that they can really take ownership of their lives. So for me, I was born and raised on Oahu. That's my cat, Marlin. I graduated from Punahou and then graduated from Cornell after my 4 years getting my bachelor's at the hotel school. And one of the things that I felt was challenged was not feeling like there was opportunity for me when I graduated if I wanted to do something different. And I wasn't sure what that was, but I really felt like I needed to move away. And that really bummed me out, but I did. And I was very kind of saddened by that, the idea that like there wasn't something for me in Hawaii. And this, of course, was over 20 years ago. And really thinking about, what do I want to do? And it took me a while to really figure that out after leaving. So these 4 key areas are going to kind of be themes throughout my talk. And these are the 4 key areas of having an entrepreneurial mindset, which is around having a learning mentality, having an ownership mentality, being agile, taking risks, as well as building networks. So I graduated and I was on this career path that was a reflection of my degree in hospitality. And when I was at the ripe age of 26, I had a quarter life crisis. And, I started seeing a career coach. And that was like really kind of awakening I had, having not been really connected to my decision making for my career, just kind of going through the motions. But I had this moment where I thought, you know what, I've got to do a reset. And I was, 26 years old. I started seeing this coach and she started asking me, what do I want to do? What was I good at? What was I not good at? What did I like doing? What did I not like doing? And it was interesting. It was the first time in my life I'd actually really thought about that around those 4 categories of what did I like doing? What did I not? What was I good at? What was I not? And those are 4 very different things. You can be really good at something and not actually like it. So I think for a lot of people, that's where they tend to get these handcuffs or golden handcuffs, because you go through life being good at something and you're supposed to do it. And you might not really like it, but as you get older, and my coach had said to me, you're lucky you're having this quarter life crisis as opposed to a midlife crisis, because you don't have the kids and the mortgage and all the other stuff that make it a lot harder to make this massive change. But through that process, she asked me to really think about anything that was interesting to me and throw it up on a wall. And so anything, it doesn't have to be at all relevant, interesting, whatever, just what did I think was something that I've in my past thought was cool or I liked or anything. And so we threw it up on a wall, and I had wine, or I had city planning, all these just different things. And so she said, okay, well, as you're taking meetings to think about what you're going to do and meet with people, keep in mind these areas that you've thrown up on the wall. And if any of them are related to those areas, take the meeting, sit down. If they're not, then don't. And I think that was a very powerful thing for me to do, was to be able to have some decision-making around what did I know I didn't want to do and what were things I was open to. And so through that process, I started my first company when I was 27 years old. And this was before the iTunes app store started. So this was back in 2016. And this was our first time having mobile devices in our hands that had data. They were pretty expensive phones, and they weren't touchscreen. They were super clunky. Some of the people on this call may remember those times, way before iPhone. But what it did was create this opportunity where for the first time in our lives, we had data at our fingertips, right? Before that, you get to be at your desktop, right? Computer at your office or your home, if you've had one at home, a laptop, but there was no data at your fingertips. And so it created an opportunity to create opportunities for business. So we thought about what was really important for us was obviously at the age of 27, finding good wine and finding cheap wine. And so that was this problem we were solving, was helping people find good wine at the grocery store and at restaurants. The great part about that is a little bit around timing was, the mobile website. We were the first mobile website in wine. and it was going pretty well. I mean, we're getting a lot of press. People thought it was really cool, but it wasn't really making money. And so ultimately, when the iPhone launched and the App Store launched, what it did was create a safe marketplace for us to sell this data, right? No one was putting their credit card on a mobile website prior to that. It was pretty risky. But what the App Store did was create this safe place on iTunes where people had their credit card attached, they could buy things. So we quickly converted our mobile website into an app, and things just started flying. It was a $4 app. And so people could download it. And this is when people still actually paid for apps. This is like, a long time ago. But we became the number one wine app on the iTunes platform, a top 10 lifestyles app, and overall 100 paid app on the whole platform. And just a really incredible first company. So for me, that was a really great learning lesson. So it was, really, I think having that learning mentality is super, super important, and having an entrepreneurial mindset. But I think it's important also to have these gut checks and having a good relationship with your gut, but really seeing every experience as a learning lesson. So for me, I jumped right in. It was super exciting. All these things were happening in technology and phones. And that was a great ride. What I wasn't doing was listening to my gut. And, I ultimately had a falling out with my co-founder. He and I had very different visions for where we wanted the company to go. And ultimately I left the company after 5 years. And I think that was a big learning lesson for me, not only from a listening to my gut standpoint, but also appreciating that whole experience I had, and really seeing it as a learning lesson, and what I've built on from then in my career. So one thing I want to ask all of you is, what's one thing you can do to grow? So thinking about that from a learning mentality. So next, I started a couple other companies in Silicon Valley, and really started thinking about moving back to Hawaii, and how could I bring what I learned in the Bay Area with startups, entrepreneurship, innovation, what I had fallen in love with, and really thinking about that challenge that I felt back in the 1999, when I was graduating college and not feeling like I could do something different, and thought, well, why can't we have more of that here in Hawaii? And why can't we have more opportunities for startups and entrepreneurship and all the things that the Bay Area had? And it was such a perfect place. And also to solve that challenge I have, like, how do we create more opportunity here? So people like you, people that want to move back home, that are here, all of the great people that want to be here can be here and have opportunity to do something, anything they want, actually. That's the beauty of innovation, right? You put an idea, put some business behind it, and start working on it, and you've got a startup. So I moved back in 2012 and quickly joined Blue Startups, which is an accelerator here, which is more leveraging my tech background. And then also worked with the University of Hawaii system with the accelerator that they launched as well. And that was really interesting, working around commercializing intellectual property at the university. And all of these pieces were really, really exciting experiences, being on the other side of the table. So being on the mentorship side, on the investment side, and leveraging all the things I had learned as an entrepreneur myself in the Valley. And so we were starting to get a lot of traction. A lot of entrepreneurship was getting a lot more awareness around what was happening. And that, I think, is really important, because a lot of times for students, it's around seeing tangible examples of success and tangible examples of startups that are moving forward and making it here, and that really spurs success. And so it was a very, very exciting time. And so I think for me, leaving Silicon Valley and having, the success that I had there, as well as failure, it was a big risk for me to move back to Hawaii and like leave all of that, where it was just like everything was just moving forward and crazy times over there. And it was wonderful, but really taking my life and taking that ownership mentality around, making that decision and being confident in that decision I made. And also, really being accountable for my actions and saying, you know what, I want to move home. I want to help contribute to an innovation ecosystem. What could that look like? What could I bring? And what kinds of opportunities could that mean for Hawaii? And really taking that on as a decision I made for myself. So one thing I want to ask all of you is, what is one part of your life that you can take ownership of now? So next, I'm going to jump into Mana Up. And this is really a very interesting part of my story, having moved home, worked with a couple of the accelerators, really thinking about how do we spur innovation here, and also looking at regional strengths or competitive advantage, and how do we broaden how we view innovation for Hawaii, and what kinds of companies additionally can really help contribute to jobs and opportunity in the islands. And so I met my co-founder, Brittany Hyde, and she and I got together to really think about what is that competitive advantage? What are the kinds of other companies that are not being given the attention around resources, mentorship, and access to capital? And really, we fell on the brand of Hawaii. And that being just like this incredible strength that Hawaii has as a globally recognized brand, one of the top recognized brands in the world. And really in the form we felt in consumer packaged goods that traditionally had not been given much awareness prior. Although we've had much success in that area, right? So we think about some of the biggest brands here around like Hawaiian Host, Mauna Loa, Honolulu Cookie Company, things like that, Kona Brew, King's Hawaiian Sweetbread, all these types of companies having had success here. How do we look at what we learned with accelerators and tech and innovation and leverage it into consumer packaged goods? So we founded the company in 2017. We really looked at, what kinds of skills are needed, leadership and things like that, to really spur the CPG industry here. And what would it look like to create jobs? Our initial goal when we started Mauna Up was to help build 100 companies that were earning 10 million or more in annual revenue. So thinking about that decision-making here in the islands, the headquarters here, that opportunity for growth, especially from a job standpoint, promotions, decision-making, and really like ultimately give back to the islands as we're helping to create these companies here that are revenue generating. What is that true give back to Hawaii? So it's now a 6-month accelerator program. And we help companies solve their business challenges in the consumer packaged goods arena. The criteria that we work with the companies is around, they have to be over 100,000 annual revenue. They have to be headquartered in Hawaii. They have to be looking to scale beyond Hawaii, as well as elevating the brand. So thinking about that, why was that important to us? This was the first time an accelerator like this had started in this totally different arena. People kind of thought we were crazy for starting this with so much criteria, like all these companies had to hit. And it's exciting to just see there was a huge tailwind happening. And there actually has been one for a while. We just weren't really paying attention to it or maybe leveraging it. But really, Hawaii is a globally loved brand. We have companies in the mainland that leverage the Hawaii brand that have nothing to do with Hawaii and have made hundreds of millions of dollars. So of course, the example here on the screen is Maui chips, right? Maui style, Maui onion potato chips. That's owned by Frito-Lay. That's a huge company that, again, to me, we're not all of a sudden going to try to like take down Frito-Lay and say, oh, you guys can't leverage the brand. But what we are going to do is help local companies who are elevating the brand of Hawaii be seen on that global scale, and be seen from a quality standpoint. We've got great companies here that are just absolute quality products and need a little bit of help. And additionally, looking at from an acquisition standpoint, Bai Molokai coconut water, they've got these Bai Puna pineapple. These are these flavored waters. That's another great example of a company that is not based here. It started in New Jersey. It was acquired for $1.7 billion by Dr. Pepper Ventures. So to us, these are all interesting data points that the brand of Hawaii is strong. It sells, and it's an opportunity for us being here and having those authentic stories and seeing some of these other data points here on the screen around, authenticity, transparency, connection to culture, and micro brands. All of these pieces are tailwinds that are supporting these trends and supporting these kinds of companies that may have already had all these elements, but now people are actually really interested. The buying power is behind them. So we started as an accelerator and quickly moved into also adding retail to our suite of services. So we have House of Mauna Up. We have 3 locations. Through the pandemic, we had a lot of challenge, especially in areas where tourists were high. And so e-commerce became life-changing and game-changing for many of these companies. And so through that process, we kept learning from our entrepreneurs. We're always very much learning mentality, like what are we learning? How are we shifting? How are we addressing the challenges of these entrepreneurs? And so through that process, we also started a logistics company to help support fulfillment for the companies because they kept saying how much they were drowning packing boxes. So we started a logistics company. And then last year, we launched our venture capital fund, the $6.3 million fund that supports consumer packaged goods companies that we've made, I think, 6 or 7 investments so far. And it's really exciting to see that companies like this that traditionally never thought they'd access to capital do, and really what that can do for the growth of their business. So looking at the portfolio at a glance, this is just a nice snapshot of our companies, and really a nice snapshot of what the impact is of Mana Up from a demographic standpoint. So of course, every company is headquartered in Hawaii. That is a requirement. 73% are manufactured in Hawaii, and that we actually make that not a requirement. There are a lot of businesses and products that you can't make here. You know, we have a 5L sustainable rubber slipper company. We don't have rubber trees here. That's not something we're all just going to stand up. Clothing, we don't grow cotton here. We don't want to be necessarily producing materials here in Hawaii, as land is so tight. And so we don't make that a requirement. We believe that that should not be a requirement. We believe strongly in the headquarters being here as an economic development initiative to create jobs and revenue and decision-making and all of those great things that can be part of growth for business here and create that critical mass of job opportunity. 60% are sourcing a raw ingredient in their product mix, and 50% are Native Hawaiian, and about 60% are female founded. Economic impact wise, these are really exciting numbers. Looking at all of our companies, and 74 companies represented 60 million in revenue to the state of Hawaii. The average company size is 923,000. They will have a 65% mean growth rate, which is really incredible. Even when you're looking at these numbers from 2021 and 2020, this is during the pandemic. Over half of the companies had their highest revenue year ever. And I think that's a real testament to when we look at economic diversification in Hawaii and why it's important for us to be investing in and looking at industries that are not so tied to tourism. I believe the brand of Hawaii is bigger than tourism. Tourism is just a part of it. Tourism is the part where people get to physically come here. The brand is overarching and above all of that. And I think that e-commerce is a really big piece of that, because people who love Hawaii maybe came here 25 years ago, hope to come here someday. All of them can purchase product that remind them of Hawaii and keep them connected to that greater brand, which is, you know, really aspirational. This also represents 415 jobs in Hawaii, so our companies. An interesting number is that 43% of the revenue was generated outside Hawaii, and we're big. That's a great number because we want to keep bringing new dollars into the state, right? We don't just want local dollars circulating locally. I mean, we of course want more local dollars spending locally, but we also want to see mainland dollars, international dollars coming into our state and spending in local businesses, because that truly is that multiplier effect. These are some of the companies you guys may recognize some of these logos: Hawaiian Pie Company, Manoa Chocolate, and some of the others. But this is a great visual of the companies to Mana Up. About a good chunk of them are in food, but then the other 3 areas are nicely represented. But you know, this slide really kind of is a testament to the quality, and it's really around that quality. How are we seen as best in class, and not just best in Hawaii, best in the world? And so Hawaii is really being seen, and these products are being seen on a national, global level as being best in class. So you see here, Big Island Coffee Roasters won best hotel coffee in the world for Forbes, right? So that's at the Hualalai Four Seasons. That's an incredible award. Looking at Manoa Chocolate winning like the best in show at the Salon du Chocolat, which is like the chocolate competition, the big chocolate competition in Paris. So I think that's just that really amazing part of like perspective, especially with our entrepreneurs here, that we can compete and we are best in class in many arenas. So I think for this piece here, this was around that building networks aspect. when we stood up Mana Up, we stood it up in 6 months. And people say, God, how did you do that so fast? And it really was because of our networks that we had built, and really making it see it as a two-way street. What can we do for you? How do we work together, helping with a shared vision? And I think that's a really important piece for all of you folks as you're in school, as you're building your networks. It's not about what can you do for me. It's about paying it forward and creating relationships, having that curiosity and staying connected. And you guys all have this great opportunity right now, in school and outside of school with your alumni networks, to push yourself to meet people outside of your norm and to continue to do that. I think that's one of my biggest skill sets is I have a natural curiosity. I love meeting people. I love asking questions and learning. And so that's been really wonderful to have this very broad supportive network, which I think was really important when we started Mana Up and continues to be. So a question I have for all of you is, are there relationships you could be establishing or stewarding better now? So my last piece here, I'm going to talk a little bit about taking risks. And as Mana Up started as just the accelerator, we've continued to grow and take risks. Some of these risks have not worked out. Some of them have. We have launched in Japan, really pushing on the wonderful people that love Hawaii and want to support Hawaii. And also looking at the fulfillment center. That's been a real challenge to stand up, but we felt it was very important. But we're continuing to push the needles, looking at our entrepreneurs, listening to them, and thinking about where can we be supporting from an infrastructure standpoint, even from agriculture. How are we supporting more growth for value add ag here as well? So you can see here, continuing to build infrastructure, taking risks. Some have been a little bit more challenging than others, but we continue to move forward with that. House of Mana Up, these are just a few pictures if you guys haven't seen those already. We have a store in Royal Hawaiian Center. We also opened at the Mauna Kea Beach Hotel recently, at a hotel in Kona side. And then even more recently, House of Mana Up at the Mauna Loa Visitor Center in Hilo. So we'll be opening more stores. We also have a great showcase we do, which will be coming up November 3rd. And that was a total crazy idea we had during the pandemic, was to take an event that we hosted in person into an online show. But we ended up having 120,000 people tune in from all over the US, Japan, and of course, Hawaii, and really making this variety show with online sales, QVC, pitches, music. Could have been a total flop, but it ended up being a really great success. And we will continue to do that to keep bringing Hawaii to the world. So this was the last piece around being agile and taking risks. So we still take risks. I won't totally get into all the risks that haven't worked out. There have been a bunch, but that doesn't stop us from continuing to try. But ultimately, it's around trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, and knowing it doesn't have to be perfect to try it. So one thing I want to ask you is, what is one risk you need to take that you have been holding back on? So these are the 4 questions that I have asked that are a reflection of the 4 core values and core traits I think is important to have an entrepreneurial mindset. And when the original quote was, success is never final, but I'm a big believer that success and failure are never final. So I don't think that as we think about the destination, it's really about the journey. And that this idea of getting to this place up here, or if you fail, getting to this place down here, it's not final. It really is about that learning, that risk-taking, that ownership, and your relationships. That's really important. So that's it. And if you guys are interested in internships, please reach out. But I'm going to stop my screen share here and jump into our Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Meli, so much for all of that advice and all those just wonderful ideas. It was very, very cool to hear all of that. And I'll definitely kind of think about this more and, apply it to my life. So yeah, we're going to move on to the Q&A portion with Meli for the next part of this leadership seminar. So audience, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we will get to them as time permits. So we'll start off with some questions. So a lot of our, like, these leadership seminars are geared towards college students a lot. So I have a question kind of pertaining to college students. So, I mean, you touched on this, but I'm asking for more like, I guess a specific example. So college is full of like going to classes, doing homework, doing tests, doing work. So there's a lot of going on. It's very easy to settle into kind of like a routine for college students to just, start going through the motions in life. So how do you recommend that college students kind of get out of this mindset of like complacency and just going through the motions? And what are some like specific practical things that they can do just, during their everyday lives, during classes, during school, like while they're in college, to kind of take more ownership of their life and kind of take on a more leadership mentality?
That's a good question. I would say, I mean, there are some very simple things. So one, I think if it's every day, maybe it's every day, write down like what's something you learned today, right? And so you start to take note of that. And I think that's really important because a lot of us can go through our everyday, like you're just busy, right? It's just like the stuff. And all of a sudden the week goes by, you don't even realize it. So I think it's important to start to write those things down. Like, what was something you knew you learned today? Or what was something you noticed today that you never noticed before, even if it's on your walk into the classroom? So, and it starts to heighten your awareness. So I think that's something very small that you can do for yourself. I think for everyone that is in college right now, you guys are literally in this hyper amazing environment of people that are learning, that are excited to be at the University of Hawaii, that are from different walks of life, from different places. And it's like, life isn't normally like this. Like, you don't just get to only exist amongst people who are all excited to be getting their degree, right? Once you graduate, life has like even a broader spectrum of people. But I think it's, you guys all have this unique and connectedness with each other. And there's some trust here, right? You guys are all going to be alumni of UH. And that's a network in and of itself. So lean into that. And look at whether I don't necessarily think you have to join all these different clubs, because that could get very time consuming, but there's always opportunities to go to like a mixer or to go to a speaking event like this. I mean, if we were in person, there would be more opportunities to network, but I think the university does an incredible job of having different speakers coming in different ways to connect. So it's just about showing up. For me, when I first moved back to Hawaii, I had what's the thing? I'm a kind of a mantra, but something I had for myself, I said yes to everything. I said, my first year back, I'm going to say yes to everything, even if I don't feel like it. And I said yes to like every event. I said yes to grabbing lunch. And that was just a very game-changing for me. Just meeting so many people and being in the room with so many people, and growing that network. And I think you folks have this really great, I wouldn't call it easier, but it's a trustedness on campus, and you guys all are connected to each other. So I think it's utilize that as you can now in the next year, 2, 3, 4 years, how much more time all of you have here on at university.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's very easy to kind of just, you do homework and you do school, and then all of a sudden it's already Friday, and it's hard to, I feel it's hard to take advantage of kind of all the opportunities at college. But yeah, I think the writing stuff down, like, doing the little things, it doesn't take a lot of time, and it's a kind of a good way to kind of, get you on track to.
And it's also as you go to some of these events and pushing yourself to meet new people, not just hanging with like your friends in the corner. Not saying anyone does that, but it's important to try to practice your networking, right? Because once you get out of school and you're in the working world, half of what you do is networking. It's working in groups. And I think I have a lot of people asking me, like, how do you network? Like when you walk into a cocktail party, what should I do, right? And so this is a wonderful way to start practicing your networking skills. How do you make conversation? How do you ask questions? How do you listen? How do you do your homework before going, knowing who you want to meet, maybe finding out some information about them prior? How do you really arm yourself in a way that really helps you take advantage of these opportunities to being in the rooms with people? And I think we all learned very harshly what it's like to no longer have those opportunities, especially with the pandemic when everything shut down and we're all staring at each other on a computer and there's like zero chance of networking that way, right? So I think it's important to take advantage of these things, to practice your networking, have a conversation with someone that you don't know, go up to them and introduce yourself, have some good questions in your back pocket or something about yourself that you're willing to share that's fun and interesting, can start a conversation, right? Try those things, because when you get out of school and you're now plopped into the Chamber of Commerce, young executive networking, I'm just coming up with something I have a lot of people asking me questions about, you're going to really appreciate those skills.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much.
So my question to you is, how has your experiences in working with local startups given you different perspectives on innovation and like technology? And also, is it different here compared to being on the mainland?
Okay, so the first question around working with different startups and entrepreneurs and my perspective on technology. Yes. So I would say my perspective started with technology, right? And I think having that opportunity, which was timing when the iPhone launched, which really helped my business be successful, was not having nothing to do with me, right? That was absolute timing and a wonderful opportunity. That is why innovation is so important. Innovation is important because that continues to create new ways of doing things, new efficient ways of doing things, problem solving, and ways that can open doors. Because if everything stayed the same forever, it would be hard to start business and ideas, right? Because that creates this whole opening for these ideas. So I think technology is at the core. Is technology on its own? I don't believe so. I think technology is just layered into everything, right? And so when you layer technology into any idea, that's where real magic has to happen. I think for this consumer packaged goods companies I'm working with now, technology is game changing. When you think about logistics, when you think about even like manufacturing machinery, it actually levels the playing field for many of these kinds of companies that are not in the mainland, that are in Hawaii. And before, it always used to be, oh, price of paradise, oh, we can't compete. And I think that's a real, from a perspective standpoint, a lot of entrepreneurs here I see have that perspective of like, oh, we can't do it as well, or it's not going to be as good, or they think, a lot of them think a little smaller than I think they should. And so that's one thing we immediately work on in Mana Up, is thinking bigger and knowing that we're at that quality, we are at that level, we are competing in global markets, we're being recognized, and having that confidence to be approaching your business and opportunities with that kind of like chutzpah and confidence that I think is absolutely necessary with entrepreneurship. So I think from looking at these different kinds of businesses, it's helped me almost become more not aggressive, but assertive, because I feel like I'm really pushing people to think bigger. And it's exciting to see when that shift happens in their head, right? And they start changing the way they're doing business and how they're engaging with network and opportunity. And it's so exciting to see when that happens. And I want to see more of that. Your second question about being difference of being here versus the mainland. Yeah, I think in the mainland, I'm trying to see how I can explain this, but I think there's just a different natural way of doing things. It's a culture thing. And so I was listening to this podcast recently about like how many seconds you wait until you like insert yourself into a conversation or when you respond. And they were saying on the East Coast, it's like half a second, and in West Coast, it's like 1.1, whatever, 1.5 seconds. And then Hawaii, it's like 3 seconds, right? So it's almost like you're kind of giving that person an ability to finish their thought and then you come in. And so what ends up happening is, for no reason other than maybe it's culture, I go to the East Coast for a conference and I feel like it's like boom, 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 boom. And like, I can't even get a word in, right? Even when I'm on a panel, because it's like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got to like, hustle up here. And it really is just like a reflection of the way that we are here in Hawaii, and that's not a bad thing, but it's about being able to shift gears depending on where you are and what your audience is. That was actually very insightful to me. It wasn't people trying to be rude. It was just what was normal. And so I think in the differences, I think for us in Hawaii, we need to continue to stay connected to the mainland. And we're always trying to push more resources, mentorship, and access, because a lot of times we get kind of forgotten because we're not connected. And it's also hard for us to get to places. But I think in addition to that, it's that perspective we have, like, oh, you know, we're not as good. And I really push back on that, because I know we are. And I've seen with all the companies I work with that we are as good, if not better, and especially in certain areas. And we need to start having more of that inner confidence and ability to jump into the conversation and be right there with everybody else.
Oh yeah, thank you. I grew up in Michigan, and I entirely agree with you that there is a culture difference between here and like on the mainland. And it's important to be able to adapt in different situations and who you're talking to. So thank you.
Thank you.
So next question is, so were there any individuals kind of along your journey that really impacted your life? And can you tell us a bit about how they changed your life or impacted the direction that you took in your, I guess, personal or professional life?
Yeah. I would say from a learning standpoint, I mentioned this earlier, my co-founder for my first company, I think that really taught me a lot how to communicate, get things down on writing, and continue to have conversation and make sure we're on the same pathway and vision for the business. And that was a great learning for me. I really thank that person for that experience, because it's helped drive not only how I operate as a founder, as a co-founder, as a business partner, but also I think it's important to teach that for new entrepreneurs that are getting their feet wet in business, and what's important. I think a lot of people get excited about starting something, and maybe it's with friends, but about really having those hard conversations about what people are bringing to the table, what their ultimate vision is for the business, what direction they want to go, what's their exit, and continuing to have those hard conversations so that they no longer become hard. They become part of your everyday. And I'm really grateful as a second person, I would say, who's been very impactful for my life, my business partner now, Brittany Hyde, whom I started Mana Up with 6 years ago. She and I couldn't ask for a better partner. We have very complementary skill sets, and that's not by chance. We really talked through what some of the things were prior to starting the business. And we continue to have these conversations that are not hard to have, but we lean into them because they're really part of our culture and the makeup of the relationship that we have with each other. And that is from both of our sides, having had experience not having that. And so that has been very game-changing. And I think that's been a big piece of the success of Mana Up, is the two of us having the relationship we have.
As a follow-up, how do you kind of approach having those hard conversations? Does it just like happen spontaneously, or do you kind of like schedule time to discuss like certain things that you want to discuss?
Yeah. I think the more you have them, that doesn't have to be like, hey, like, can we go for a walk? And so, I mean, you never want to hear that, especially from like your boyfriend or girlfriend, I'm sure, either. but for us, we part of our culture is around radical candor. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, definitely look it up. It's actually kind of a fun video, a short video that can really share what that is. But it's about having that honesty and being able to share, but with love. So we will nip things in the bud like very quickly. If like something happened, we'll talk about it, and not in a way to place blame or to make anyone feel bad. It's actually with love, and that the key piece is our relationship, and being able to share something that's bothering us or important, or something that happened, but knowing the ultimate goal is the relationship, right? And that it's in its very strong and healthy form. So I'd say when we need to have those conversations, we'll just say, hey, let's talk. We gotta do a little like reset. Like, what do we actually want to do here? Or what's going on? Like, I feel like this is leading in this direction versus here. And it doesn't have to be, I think when you get scared to have those conversations is when it's already a reflection of like a not healthy relationship. And so for us, having them is not scary. We just say, hey, like, let's do a little 30-minute here. It's totally sideline. That's like on this subject. And we're both like, yes, that sounds great. Because we know we're going to talk through it, and we've built up those muscles to be able to take some of that critical feedback, and that's with love, but also know that we both have like a very clear like shared vision, and we continue to talk about it. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I think I've had situations where my business partner, we didn't have a strong relationship. So it was always like this scary thing you didn't want to like bring up. But I think it's important to have them because, you know, a lot of times when co-founders come together, and for many of you that may have started a company with someone, you have this like awesome idea, you guys like shake hands and you're like, all right, cool. And you have this agreement that's verbal, right? Oh, we're going to split 50-50 and like, it's just going to be awesome. And then you keep going down this road of what you interpreted that conversation and what they interpreted it, right? And it will keep going like this because human nature, everyone, human nature wise, will always have their best interest in mind, right? So my version of the conversation will never put me at a disadvantage, right? It'll always be slightly more like advantageous, whatever that slight thing is, right? But so basically it's going to keep going like this, unless you have it written down or do a reconnect. Like, hey, I know we discussed this. Like, let's write it down. Or like, hey, I know we discussed doing a 50-50 and you said you were going to do these things. I was going to do these things, but that's not happening anymore, right? How do we adjust so it doesn't keep going like this? And I think those are important to have them, or things like that I think are helpful, so it doesn't at some point become like over here and over here, and it's like really difficult to get back from there.
Yeah, it's great to hear how, like, I guess you've built up that relationship with your partner or the business partner, and kind of are so open to discussing things. It's very encouraging to hear that.
So why is it important for some of your companies to be Native Hawaiian or women-owned?
Yeah, I think for us, it's really around that diversity, and maybe something from like my days in Silicon Valley, or just looking at the business profile, it tends to not be those types of leaders and CEOs. We've had a lot, higher in other areas, especially if for obvious reasons, like male CEOs, right? And so I think for us, we really went deep into our community to make sure there was awareness of our program, and that there was a comfortability around diverse people to see that this was a program for them. And that I think it's been really incredible just to see success breeds success, right? So seeing those tangible examples of these female CEOs, Native Hawaiian and different races, and seeing that is doable and that they're from their communities. We're a statewide initiative, so we have companies from every island. And that's been really amazing, because I think for students, for kids, for adults, seeing a person that's just like them from their community, that looks like them, and that they've been successful and that they're continuing to grow, is really incredible from a confidence standpoint. And I could do it too, because I could see someone. And so it's important for us to have those diverse types of leaders that we're highlighting, because I think it'll continue to breed more of those different and diverse leadership that we desperately need to have. And we're really proud of those numbers. We always pick the best entrepreneur. So we don't actually select people because of their race or their gender. And it just so happens that through a lot of the work we've done, the entrepreneurs that we want to work with that are a great fit for the program are super diverse. And that's amazing to see.
Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely representation when you're younger is important, and seeing people that are like similar to you in positions of power is inspirational. And yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice to know that among, you choose the best candidates, and it's so encouraging to hear that so many of them are, from different backgrounds and cultures. It just kind of knowing that no matter where you come from, that you have potential to, succeed and do well and share your ideas with others.
Yeah,
So we have
absolutely.
an audience question. Is it fair to say your business model is similar to Shark Tank?
Definitely not. We're nice. No, I'm just kidding. So I would say it's not similar to Shark Tank. So for our accelerator, it's free for entrepreneurs to come into the program. It is a 6-month program, and then we have an alumni program that's really robust. We're excited to be launching more programs that are focused on companies that are over $1 million in sales. And that's really a privilege for us, because a lot of times companies started here and then left. And it was challenging because the jobs wouldn't be here. And as the companies grew, and that the revenue and et cetera weren't here. And so to me, that wasn't economic development initiative that was working, because we want people here, we want the jobs here. And so it's neat to see that of the 74 companies that have come through Mana Up, we now have over half of them are over $1 million in sales. Actually, just under half of them, like 45% are over $1 million in sales. And that is like this great jump that we want to be supporting with more programming. We do have our venture fund. We invest in some of the companies. So if you come through Mana Up and you're not looking to raise capital, then we won't invest, and we don't take an equity stake. So I'm not really sure how Shark Tank works, but we only invest in companies that are looking for investment, that it makes sense for us to invest in. Of course, we make the ultimate decision. We also really help the companies grow through our own sales channels. So our House of Mana Up retail stores and our online store, as well as helping them solve their business challenges, whether that be in PR, marketing, finance, packaging, all the other different aspects. So it really is an economic development initiative for companies that are based here to help them grow. I think for Shark Tank, it's more, it's a great platform for awareness of a company. And I think that the sharks there look at companies that they can ultimately invest in and help grow through their platforms. And so for us, we're a lot broader. We have a lot of programs that are for companies even prior to Mana Up that may not be ready yet. So we launched 2 companies this year, 2 programs this year, and then we have our alumni programs that's regardless of if we've invested or not. So I think it's a lot broader and really helping to lift up the community.
Yeah, thank you. Last question. What do you think you see the biggest challenges for innovators here in Hawaii, and what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge would be around, one of it is the mindset shift that we need to all have. So I think that's super, super important. And that's a challenge I'm not gonna not mention, because that's half the battle, is that mindset for us to think bigger, grow bigger, and know that we can do that here. Other pieces that are less inspiring are just, it is the sheer fact that we are in the middle of the Pacific. So, shipping, logistics, sourcing can be a challenge. But with that said, we're big believers in headquarters here doesn't have to be made here. So a lot of those things can be shifted. And I think with technology and logistics and some of these other things coming to the table, those portions are less of a challenge than prior. So I think the ultimate piece is that mindset shift. And the best piece of advice would be, if you're getting started on a company or on a business, or if you're thinking about it, and if you're doing anything in your life, and just with that entrepreneurial mindset, really think about why you started, why this is important to you. And I think that's a piece that you have to continue to have that gut check and be connected to. Like, what is your why? What do you love? Why do you do what you do? And be very connected. And when things get hard, which they will, connect back to that. Because if you have a really good relationship with who you are and why you do what you do and what's important to you, when things get hard, you can come back to that, and that's going to be a real piece of strength for you.
Well, thank you, Adam and Mia, for the leading the conversation today. And then again, to the Hayashida Ohana for their support. But Meli, it was always good to hear. I mean, I always look forward. 1 hour is not enough with you because I just love to hear your perspectives on things. You know, I heard a lot about relationships and the value of relationship, and not just with others, but with yourself. You just mentioned communication, right? I Googled radical candor, and I actually love that, the whole caring and challenging at the same time. You know, that I think that's something that we can all embrace as well. So appreciate you sharing your experiences and your mana'o with our community. Meli, I am a huge fan. My wife is a huge fan of Mana Up, so at least she's very familiar with the store. So always good to have you aboard. For everyone else, you know, thank you. Please join me in thanking Meli for sharing today. But also coming up in October 7th, next Friday, Tiffany Hune from Elemento Accelerator will be joining us for conversation as well. So mahalo for joining us. We always appreciate you being a part of our community and the dialogue that we have. Hopefully we see you next week with Tiffany and hear what she has to say about the accelerator. So thank you all again. Have a fantastic weekend. Aloha.